Are the Denver Broncos about to shake up the 2025 NFL Draft, which begins just a little bit less than 6 hours from this very moment? After another overtime loss to the Dallas Stars, just how much is at stake for the Colorado Avalanche in Game 4 and in this series as a whole? Will Michael Porter Jr. play tonight after sustaining a joint sprain injury in Game 2? And how in the world are they going to stop Kawhi Leonard? And if they stop Kawhi Leonard, then James Harden as well. All things to come on today's rundown, but we begin in the world of the NHL, where the Colorado Avalanche, for a second straight time, suffer a painful, heartbreaking, disappointing, and frustrating overtime loss to the Dallas Stars, giving them back the home ice advantage that was stolen by Colorado in Game 1. It is time to go inside the action, presented by Embers Living. Elevate your outdoor living with full luxury outdoor kitchens featuring Twin Eagles appliances. The Colorado Avalanche had what was supposed to be a pretty exciting night. It was the return after 1,032 days of the captain. The captain cometh home, Gabe Landeskog, touching ice in an NHL game, no longer a Colorado Eagles game, for the first time since hoisting Lord Stanley's Cup against the Tampa Bay Lightning in summer of 2022. The reception, by all video accounts and from the firsthand accounting of our own Anilo Piro and Will Peterson and others who were in the building in Ball Arena, was something that is in rarefied air in terms of sports environments here in the state of Colorado. The noise factor and the excitement and energy in the building as Gabe Landeskog touched the ice after Mackenzie Blackwood skated out for warmups. Everything was there. The stage was set for it to be a pretty magical night. And that carried over into the first 20 seconds of the game when Gabe Landeskog, who coincidentally, or maybe not, lined up against his former teammate and friend Mikko Rantanen at the opening faceoff, and then in 27 seconds into the game, managed to skate across the ice and push Mikko Rantanen into the ground from behind in what could have been a penalty, hitting him from behind at that angle like that. But he forces Mikko Rantanen to the ground, essentially reestablishing his presence on the ice, a very captain-like move that when I first saw it, my instant thought went to the late, great Kobe Bryant intentionally causing confrontation with his teammate Pau Gasol in the 2008 Olympic Games, where they were forced to play for their respective countries in the opposite ends of that game. And man, the excitement and the positivity that was there at the beginning of that game and really carried through the first period, I would say, despite some sloppy play, it dissipated pretty quickly after that. When asked about his emotions in the return, and the video tribute that was very touching and has certainly been circulated across social media, just about how important Gabe Landeskog is, he said, quote, "Yeah, I mean, that was amazing. I'm just blessed and very fortunate to be in a position to feel those feelings. It was pretty special. That is a memory for life." And the video tribute, referencing Gabe Landeskog being named one of the youngest captains in the history of the National Hockey League and his lengthy tenure here in Colorado with what he's meant to the team from a scoring perspective, from a leadership and locker room perspective, as a physical presence on the ice, defending his teammates, not being unwilling to drop the gloves when necessary, and just how much the team feels more connective when he's there. It was special. It was one of those things that, similar to how it felt when we saw him come out onto the ice for the Eagles for the very, very first time. But man, to see it happen in an Avs sweater with the C over his heart, it was a big deal. And that's part of what makes it so disappointing and unfortunate, the way that the game unfolded, because really after a sloppy first period, it kind of just felt like the Avs were in a lull. They were zombified. I felt like they didn't play as crisp and clean as they typically do. The power play continues to be a mystifying issue for the Avs. They went 0 for 6 in this game, and they are currently ranked 13th in power play percentage among the 16 playoff teams left playing hockey. And it just felt like a lot of the positivity around the changes that we had talked about yesterday that they might make, switching up the line, putting Gabe with Coyle and Kiviranta and bumping out Miles Wood, mixing up the defensive line pairings to help shore up some shortcomings on the blue line. None of it really translated the way that we thought, other than the best forward playing in a burgundy and blue sweater was the guy who hadn't played hockey in 3 years. Gabe Landeskog was arguably the best forward for the Avalanche last night. And that is not a good sign for a postseason contending team that is trying to take hold of a series that was tied 1-1 as the lower seed without home ice advantage. But that's how it felt. I thought Nathan MacKinnon was uncharacteristically bad. He had a sloppy interference penalty that probably should have been called a tripping penalty. And I know that you could hear it on the broadcast, the crowd reaction to that penalty, especially because it came just seconds after the Avs had successfully killed a penalty to put them back on the disadvantage where Dallas would take hold of the scoring 9 seconds in. Just a really frustrating sequence from him. I think Cale Makar has had a pretty rough series in general. I think that him and Taves have had some low-level moments on the defensive end of the ice, and even on the offensive side. You know, you might read a box score statistic that says Cale Makar had 3 or 4 shots on goal, but they were not very high danger shots, and the ones that did kind of present opportunities or rebound potential in front of Ottinger, it wasn't capitalized on. So all in all, it just feels like you have 2 of your best skaters in Nathan MacKinnon and Cale Makar not performing up to the level that's going to be needed to hold serve with a team like Dallas. And that's not a recipe for success. Jonathan Drouin has been an absolute black hole. They need to get him off of the top power play line immediately. He had a really bad game, and he's not had the best series thus far. Marty Necas, for all the speed and dazzle that he showed since coming over in the Mikko Rantanen trade, and kind of that connection playing alongside Nathan MacKinnon, that had us going, oh, hey, you know what? Maybe Necas is about to get a Mikko bump, and we're going to see Mikko Rantanen kind of fall off without playing next to one of the great distributors in hockey. That is not translated in the playoffs. That line with MacKinnon and Necas and Lehkonen, specifically between MacKinnon and Necas, there are issues there. I don't know if it's connectivity and chemistry. I don't know if it has to do with right-handed and left-handed just not meshing well when you're trying to make things happen going up the ice and creating a rush. But they may need to look at making an adjustment there. And that the concept of adjustments is where I think this series and some of the struggles and the difficulties have come down to, because I think Peter DeBoer and the Dallas Stars have very well adjusted, especially after taking kind of a gut punch in game 1 in a lopsided game that wasn't lopsided for the first 43 minutes of the hockey game. They have adjusted well to what Colorado does, how they play offensively, and how to best defend against them. The Avalanche, conversely, have not seemed to adjust well to playing the style of hockey that is going to be commonplace with the Dallas Stars, that more physical brand of hockey, pushing the puck down into the zone, cycling it around, and kind of just digging in and getting gritty with it. The Avalanche have not done a good job of adjusting to that, because that's not the style with which they normally play. When you look at the Avalanche in the regular season, their game, led by Nathan MacKinnon and accented by pieces like Val and Necas and Cale Makar and the like, is built on speed and finesse and precision and tactical movement up and down the ice. It's not a blunt force trauma, overwhelmingly physical style of hockey, but that's the way Dallas plays. And thus far, Dallas is dictating how things are going for large stretches of these games. And so I do think that there's an element of this series thus far that points to Jared Bednar just getting outcoached again by Peter DeBoer. It's not the first time, certainly, that this has happened in these matchups between these two head coaches. And it's not to say that Jared Bednar's not a good coach or he's not doing, certain things right thus far in the series. It's just, you can't spell out a situation where a team has led in the series for a grand total of 70 seconds and yet they have a 2-1 series lead without pointing to certain adjustments not being made that need to be made. And I got to be honest, some might look and say, hey, well, don't overreact. The Colorado Avalanche have led for all but 70 seconds of the first 3 games in this series. They're playing it tight. They're playing well, and it just hasn't gone their way. They don't have enough puck luck and things like that. I think that's far too dismissive. One, I'm not even sure puck luck really exists, okay? And the other thing about luck, if you want to go down that rabbit hole, is you don't get to choose when you have it and when you don't. So therefore, relying on it is essentially using hope as a strategy, and that's not the proper course of action for the Avalanche. So in my opinion, the fact that the Colorado Avalanche have led and had the control on the scoreboard for the overwhelming majority of the series and find themselves down 2-1, that's a nerve-wracking thing for me, because they haven't been lucky thus far. I don't see a reason why their luck would turn around. And I think some of the trends that are unfolding and the observations we're making are concerning and need addressing. Like I said before, if Jonathan Drouin is on the top power play line going into Game 4, I will be stunned, and it would point toward an adjustment failure for Jared Bednar. In my opinion, they should put Gabe back on the top power play line. The guy who's been back to hockey for 1 game in the last 3 years, he should be moved right up there, and you run the Monstars unit. Get the size in there with Nate and Val and Gabe and Kale and Lehkonen and get something going. They have to be better on the power play and take advantage of those opportunities. Because to be frank, among the 6 power play opportunities that the Avalanche had last night, 2 of the best shot attempts of the entire night with the Avs on the power play came as shorthanded opportunities for the Dallas Stars going the other direction. It's just it's unacceptable, frankly, for a team that is trying to maintain serious postseason contention. And as we mentioned at the tail end of this regular season, pushed their chips into the center of the table. And I'll say this. We talked about yesterday in the hundreds, 300 and something previous examples of a playoff series tied at 1-1. The winner of Game 3 goes on to win said series 66% of the time. So the Avalanche, in losing Game 3 at home and the giving back home ice advantage to the higher seeded Dallas Stars, have now put themselves in that 34% grouping that is going to have to fight the historical trend to come back and win. Can they do it? Yeah, because in my heart of hearts, I still feel like the Avalanche are the better team in this series. They are just not playing like it for enough stretches of time thus far through 3 games. And as much as we don't want to say it and we don't want to go that direction because of what happened to the other team that plays in Ball Arena this season, but if the Avalanche lose control of this series and bow out against the Dallas Stars in the first round, we could be looking at a situation where Michael Malone, the winningest head coach in franchise history for the Denver Nuggets, and Jared Bednar, the Stanley Cup winning coach for the Colorado Avalanche, who hoisted the Stanley Cup just a number of years ago, could be fired in the offseason. And that is not a thought that I want to have floating around in my brain, or a scenario that I want to entertain for a team that I still think has championship potential. But I think if that were to happen, it's a very real possibility. So you're looking at a situation now where I think going into Game 4, where you have to try to tie up the series again at 2-2 before heading back to Dallas, the Avalanche are playing for their series this Saturday in Game 4. If they fall behind 3-1 with the momentum that Dallas has already managed to build forward without Miro Heiskanen, without Jason Robertson, stealing Game 3 in Colorado, ruining and spoiling Gabe Landeskog's return, falling down 3-1 in that series feels like a pretty insurmountable feat if you're the Colorado Avalanche. In the same way that I think the Nuggets are playing and fighting for the life of their series tonight against the LA Clippers. So both teams, in my opinion, fighting for their series and fighting for their lives. And for the Colorado Avalanche, it could be a situation where Jared Bednar's coaching for his job in this game. And I just think that when you look back at all the little moments where Blackwell's goal gets past Blackwood and they lose game 2 despite playing well enough to win for the good stretches of that game, and you lose that opportunity and it's 1-1 instead of 2-0. Then you come home and you think, okay, they split in Dallas. Hey, this series was probably going to go 6 games one way or the other. These are 200-point teams. Gabe's coming back. You get this reinforcement, urgency, momentum, and motion, and you lose that game in overtime in heartbreaking fashion once again. And now you're down 2-1 instead of being up 3-0 or 2-1. There's only so many of those little moments that you can absorb in a tight series with little margin for error before they snowball into something bigger. And the Avalanche, in my opinion, are on the precipice of that. And if you're Marty Necas, who, again, was dazzling at points during the regular season after coming over from Carolina in the Mikko Rantanen trade, this isn't regular season Marty Necas. And I think there were rumblings of just like we got rumblings out of Seattle after the Russell Wilson trade about how things really were with Russ. There are rumblings and have been whispers coming out of Carolina and those who covered and observed Marty Necas closely with the Hurricanes that Marty Necas' game doesn't translate necessarily very well automatically in the postseason. He's a little bit smaller body, the speed and the finesse that he traditionally plays with that can make him kind of a formidable asset offensively among a forward group. When you're matched up with a physical team that slows things down and kind of grinds it in there, and it's a gritty, grimy style of play, that doesn't always work well with Necas. And so that hinders your top line with Nathan MacKinnon, who doesn't have the same level of options to distribute to, and then is forced to try to do things more on his own. And he finds himself skating into the offensive zone, getting pinned down, having to turn around, and it becomes erratic. These are things that I don't think we could have anticipated or seen until they've unfolded live. And I think that's where we're at now. Because if you're looking at the Avalanche's style of play offensively, it's pretty repetitive. It's very clear to me the way the Avs are trying to set up their offense and play things offensively. We're going to take blue line shots. We're going to try to put bodies on net, hope for rebound opportunities, and take advantage of them when they're there. The only problem is they're not getting the rebound opportunities because Ottinger is not uncomfortable at all. They're not getting bodies enough in front of the net to disrupt him, take him off of his points, and make him uncomfortable. Therefore, his lines of sight are not disrupted, and he's glove saving and trapping half of their shot opportunities. So it kills the momentum right there. And then when they do get rebound opportunities, Ottinger, again, doesn't have enough bodies in front of him to disrupt it, so he's able to get into position easier to defend against those rebounds, or they're deflected and cleared by Dallas's defensemen. So the same cycle of that happening over and over and over again is, in essence, folding right into Dallas's hand and playing exactly the style of hockey that they want because they're built and prepared and coached against defending that. And I just think that without any adjustments, as talented as the Avalanche are, the Dallas Stars are pretty damn talented too. And they being the Avalanche, cannot just keep trotting out and trying to say, hey, we got to keep doing what we're doing. We got to just do it better. I think they've got to go back to the drawing board and try to change some things up. Move the lines around a little bit. Fix the power play. Whatever they've got to do. If it doesn't manifest itself in Game 4, we could be looking at some early exits for both of our teams that call Ball Arena home. All right. That is Inside the Action presented by Embers Living. Speaking of the high-level decision-making that's going to have to take place for the Avs with Jared Bednar and the like in terms of game-to-game management. The high-level decision-makers of the Denver Broncos are not on the clock yet, but that clock is ticking down very, very fast. We are 5 hours or so away from the start of the 2025 NFL Draft. And once again, we are hearing more buzzing and more words about the Broncos potentially being on the move. Is it up? Is it down? I don't know. But we do know that reputable NFL insiders, the likes of Daniel Jeremiah, Tom Pelissero, and Adam Schefter on multiple occasions are reporting that the Denver Broncos are fielding calls up, they are fielding calls down, and the vibe is getting a little bit more serious and intentional than just checking to see the price of things. Adam Schefter most recently reported on the Denver Broncos saying, quote, they have fielded calls in recent days from teams interested in potentially moving up to their number 20 selection, per sources. The Broncos currently hold the slot in front of Pittsburgh's number 21. Why is that relevant? Well, all indications are pointing toward a pretty significant slide in the NFL draft for former Buffs quarterback Shedeur Sanders. And Pittsburgh, a team that would be interested and is in need of a quarterback at 21, could be in a position if he falls to, past whatever it is, 15, 16, the teams that are between Pittsburgh and that number are not in need of a quarterback, including Denver, and therefore they would be able to take him. But if there's a team like the Cleveland Browns who has the number 2 overall pick, isn't going to pass on a generational talent, perhaps like a Travis Hunter or maybe an Abdul Carter or something of that nature, assuming Cam Ward goes number 1 overall to the Tennessee Titans. Denver's number 20 pick right in front of Pittsburgh, who is at a position of need for a quarterback, is the most logical jumping point to move in front if a team behind 21 wants to get there. And that presents some interesting options for the Denver Broncos because, lest we forget, it is also pretty widely reported and considered that amongst the mocksters and evaluators and talent scouts, executives, coaches, and the like that are grading and doing the homework on these draft picks, this is not the deepest draft in terms of true graded out first-round talent. Of the 32 picks in the NFL draft, there are teams who have reported maybe only seeing somewhere between 14 or 18 to 20 top-level first-round draft grade talents. So if you're picking outside of the top 18 or so, there is a very good chance that you may not have a player left on your board when it's your turn to pick that you gave a first-round grade to. Which, if that's the case, there's a very logical argument, provided a path is there, to maybe move back, if not, maybe not out of the first round, which is what the case would be with the Cleveland Browns example, but move back from, say, 20 to 27 or 24 to recoup some additional assets, maybe another second or third round pick to be able to give you more darts, to use the George Payton analogy, to throw at the board in a round where you have more talent graded accurately and you're not reaching or overdrafting to the degree that you would if you had stayed at 20. There is still smoke to the fire, in my opinion, of the Broncos trading up, whether it's for a Colston Loveland who has who Sean Payton has a reported love affair with at the tight end position, to be the longer-term answer at the joker role for the Denver Broncos behind Evan Ingram, the free agency signing, who's in his 30s and maybe only has a 2-year shelf life or so with the team. It also depends on how the board falls in front of them. If there's a run at the running back position and you see Omarion Hampton from North Carolina, who's a very popular and common draft pick mocked to the Broncos, I think he's the odds-on favorite to be picked by the Broncos at this current time. If there's a run and he gets drafted early, and maybe there's urgency to draft a Travion Henderson, even though I think that would be a little bit of a chase, in my opinion, you could see them try to move up for that skill position player, or they stay pat and they take a defensive tackle or something that falls to them in that regard. All I know is nobody seems to really know what the Denver Broncos are going to do or what their plan is. And these reports that leak out little by little from, again, reputable and credible insider sources around the NFL, I think there's a little bit more than just a smokescreen. And we do know Sean Payton likes to smokescreen because he was so giddy and happy to tell everyone how he thinks he duped the Minnesota Vikings into J.J. McCarthy and he's that we're better at this than everybody else, and we think we've got it all figured out and blah blah blah. So there could be a smokescreen element to this, but I actually think beyond the mind games element, that the Broncos may not know exactly what they want to do until the clock starts ticking and teams are making selections, and they can kind of see how it plays out. Because I think there's a very real world where Sean Payton has made it clear to George Payton, hey, if player X or player Y gets past pick A or B, we're going to move up to get that guy, and I need you to have the framework in place. Conversely, I think there's a very real world where George Payton and Sean Payton have communicated, and George says, okay, hey, that's great. But if this and this don't happen, and this are here, we're going to move back. And I've got framework in place for that. And while that's, exhausting and frustrating, I think for the likes of you and I to pontificate and spin in circles and wring our hands over who it could be and what it could be. You've got 4 positions of need. Is it offense? Is it defense? Is it playmaker? Is it this? The Broncos have options. And I think that in and of itself is something to be, thankful for, because they solved the mystery with Bo Nix, at least for now, knocking on marble. Because they've solved that mystery for the time being, they don't have to pigeonhole themselves into a position. They don't have to, as George and Sean Payton alluded to in their pre-draft press conference, they don't have to step over the crystal to find a blender. They don't have to be going into a round with a predetermined disposition or preference. They can let the draft in some ways come to them and then react and take the best player available in those positions. Dollars to donuts for my money. I don't know that the Broncos are going to trade. I don't know that they're going to have a framework in place to trade up. And I just think the cost, especially on the gun in the moment, of what it's going to take to maybe move up to get the playmakers that they've mentioned, albeit a Colston Loveland, or on the furthest end of the spectrum, a Tyler Warren or an Ashton Genty. I don't know that they're going to be so willing to jump back into the giving up draft capital pool after just getting it all back from the Sean Payton and Russell Wilson trades and freeing themselves of more and more dead cap every single year. I think they stay in pat at 20. I think Omarion Hampton makes a lot of sense. If there's a defensive tackle like Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss available, I think that's extremely tempting. Or they trade back and both of those names and or positions still apply. Maybe it's just a Travion Henderson in the late 20s instead of Omarion Hampton at 20, or instead of a Walter Nolan, it's somebody else along the defensive front that can help bolster that front 4. But I think the Broncos are in a good position to be able to add a playmaker at a position of need. I just don't know that there's a very clear path until we see how the first 14 picks of the NFL draft, and I say 14 very intentionally, unfold so that they can get a clear path of what they want to do. In terms of the Denver Nuggets, they've got an important game tonight. And I mentioned earlier that they, in my mind, heading into game 3, the series shifting to LA now after the first 2 games in Denver, they, in my mind, are playing for their series tonight. And I think that the Clippers playing their first postseason home game at the Intuit Dome, where David Adelman somewhat controversially maybe pointed out that the environment is very loud, in part because of pumped-in crowd noise, which set a lot of Clippers fans off, and people in LA were rubbed the wrong way. But crowd noise or not, somebody's got to stop Kawhi Leonard. The Claw is looking like he has returned to, early 2020s / 2019 form in some respects, with his shot-making ability and his prowess on the defensive end of the floor. And you're going to have a situation where you may likely play without Michael Porter Jr., who suffered the shoulder injury, the joint sprain at the end of last game, where he took an awkward angle on a turnover and fell down awkwardly. And his status is uncertain as it currently sits in this moment. And they are kind of practicing and doing the shoot around thing right now. So we'll know in the very near future an update on Michael Porter Jr. But if he is out and you have to reshuffle the lineup, how do you balance that with the notion that you have 2 lethal shooters on the floor in Kawhi Leonard and James Harden? and how do you replace and replicate Michael Porter Jr.'s presence without sacrificing the things you need to do on the defensive end of the floor. And really the two names you can turn to are Russell Westbrook and Payton Watson. And for my mind, if I'm, David Adelman trying to make that decision, there is very, very little of me that wants to see Russell Westbrook in the postseason thrust into a starting lineup. That is not what he was brought in to do. I think that even if his hustle play and his ability and the fact that the Clippers are leaving him open for a lot of wide open shots and you can hope that he just capitalizes on it, I think you have to turn to, if you're David Adelman, Payton Watson, and say, we're putting you in the starting lineup. Russ is going to come off the bench as the sixth man like he's been, and that's the rotational switch. And Payton Watson, you're guarding Kawhi Leonard. Good luck, man. Good luck and do what you got to do. But you just hope that with the size conceding that Payton Watson, from a girth standpoint, is going to give up to Kawhi, he makes up for in length and good positioning and just kind of the tenacious nature with which he plays defensively. But we already saw the Nuggets fire their head coach this season. And if this game does not go well, I think it is a nail in the coffin type moment for the series, going down 3-1 as the higher seed. And it'll feel like Cinderella's carriage might be turning more into a pumpkin at that point. So I think the Denver Nuggets, while they might not be, fighting and playing to avoid firings and things like that, I think they are fighting for their series, and the getting bounced in the first round as a top 4 seed in the Western Conference would definitely add some fuel onto the fire that is going to be burning in the blow up the roster camp. And that's going to open up a whole can of worms conversationally, in the same way that the Avalanche losing control, even though they're not the higher seed, losing control of this series with Dallas, if they are unable to take care of business this weekend in Game 4, could mean significant changes from the coaching perspective with Jared Bednar, and have a future outlook on the season that could suggest other changes as well. We will, like I said to Will Peterson just the other day, we're fixing to find out. There's a lot going on, and we will see you a little bit later tonight, actually. We've got a special NFL draft edition of The Rundown that's going to be airing tonight at our draft party live at the Sportsbook Bar and Grill DTC right there off Arapahoe Road. Zach By and Philip Lindsay are going to broadcast there starting at 2. At 4 o'clock from 4 to 6, Brandon Stokely is going to jump in on the action with the fellas for our fan draft party. And then Mr. Draft himself, Cecil Lammy, and John Davis will be live from the Sportsbook Bar and Grill in DTC from 6 to 10, carrying you through every first-round pick, including whoever and wherever the Denver Broncos choose to select. We will be live here on all of our social channels on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. A few picks before the Broncos go. We're going to carry you through the live reactions, so we encourage you to tune in, make some predictions. We'll react to it with you live. We'll get some input from Mike Evans and other fan personalities. We'll get some instant reactions to things, and it's going to be a great time. So either stop by and see us at the Sportsbook Bar and Grill DTC, or join us live right here on our social media channels, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Either way, we'll see you in a little bit.